Thank you very much, Chris, and group. Chris, should I go till 10 minutes after, or should I try to talk really, really fast?
I think you're okay going 10 minutes after. A little bit faster would be great.
Okay, very good. I'll try the best. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you especially Kapil, David, for this for trying to put structure around, as you said, a difficult to get your head around topic of agility. So it was a delight to read your work, and in particular what we appreciated, and Nick is going to join immediately after my little short intro here. What we appreciated was trying to define what can be a very slippery and hard to grasp concept and differentiate it from a bunch of other things. Talk about the drivers and as David just did, also relatedly the challenges, as well as laying out a research agenda. So that was very helpful. What we thought we would do, as Nick and I were talking about as this topic, is we said, just as auto manufacturers test cars at the extremes of heat and cold, what would happen if we test the framework that David and Kapil and team have offered in the context of extreme change, and specifically in the context of digital products in emerging markets? These two images represent products that Nick was instrumental in helping create for the world, but the point applies more generally as well in emerging markets. So if you think about it, if you think about some of the big changes in say Chicago, or in the United States more broadly over the last many years. So smartphones arrived, 20 years ago or so. Phones arrived a little earlier than that, maybe a century or so ago. Appliances of various kinds arrived about a century ago. Banking services a few centuries ago. Highways, again, depending on where you live, a few decades to many decades ago. E-commerce, again, decades ago. Mobile commerce more recently. Now, transplant yourself from Chicago to Nairobi, Kenya, or indeed in a Maasai village in Kenya. Smartphones, electric city-based appliances, banking services, highways, mobile commerce, electronic commerce, all arrived within the space of just a few years. So these are the extremes of change, extremes of technological change, social change, economic change. And so what happens if we apply this framework to these extremes of change? And so we highlight two elements that might be different or might be particularly pronounced in contexts like these, and we call them trajectories and twists. Now, back to Kapil and David and colleagues' framework. They point out there are four dimensions to this concept of marketing agility: sense-making, iteration, speed, and marketing decisions. Of course, we're talking marketing here, so we won't emphasize marketing decisions. Speed, in some ways, is inherent in agility, so we'll keep that aside for now. We're going to focus on these two other dimensions that are, in our minds, fairly central: sense-making and iteration. Now, sense-making, as Kapil and David and team point out, is responding to unexpected or ambiguous developments. Now, again, the challenge in emerging markets is that you're constantly bombarded with unexpected or ambiguous developments. Many developments are unexpected or ambiguous. And so what do? Does one go boing, 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 boing every time you get hit by some unexpected development? What we have observed is that you can still engage in long-term thinking while embracing agility. And the way you do that is you create sense-making not only by responding, but by drawing trajectories, which are simplified representations of patterns. So we're all familiar with exponential curves. That represents a trajectory. Yeah? And you anticipate certain trajectories, you integrate certain trajectories. Similarly, Kapil and David and team point out agility involves the process of iteration, rapidly refining marketing decisions. So I almost imagined a sculpture that you polish and refine and create something beautiful with. Well, in emerging markets, what you often end up doing is engaging in what we call strategic twists, where it's not just the sculpture, you have to throw away the sculpture and do something completely different, or dramatically change direction. And this means discovering new insights and reframing your mental model. Now, Nick has done this, and we've written case studies that we use at London Business School. You're welcome if you're interested with teaching notes, etc. It too has been involved in two innovations that have remarkably transformed the lives of many millions of people, especially in Eastern Africa. About 50% of Kenya's GDP goes through M-Pesa, the mobile money service that Nick helped found. So let me hand things over to Nick to talk about both M-Pesa and M-Kopa and the specifics of trajectories and twists.
Great. Thanks, Rajesh. Yeah, thanks very much. And David and Kapil, thank you for the paper. I mean, I felt a lot of affinity with your title because I spend a lot of my time trying to get software developers to deliver things on time, and they keep saying, no, Nick, we can't give you a deadline or a budget because we're working on an agile process. And that for me is, is sometimes a little frustrating. But I really enjoyed the paper, and what I'd like to do in my few minutes here is just go into those two case studies, M-Pesa and M-Kopa, and just pick up those trajectories and twist comments with some live evidence from the market. I'm going to start though with if it works, with an advert, a TV advert that we put together, and then I'll come back to how big this product is now in Kenya. Now, I don't know if I need to click or Matt, you might be able to make the video work for me. Let's have a go. Maybe it won't. Maybe we'll be defeated by.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to click?
No, it won't let me click on the video. So Matt, I don't know if you could jump in. If we can't, we'll. No, okay, Matt, it doesn't work for you either. So anyway, I was going to show you a TV advert, which M-Pesa is now 14 years old, so it's sort of a little bit of a teenager. But right in the early days of M-Pesa, we spent a grand sum of about $10,000 on a television advert, which is, you can still find it on YouTube if you hunt for it. But it was a very cheesy advert, and but it launched what became a very successful service, and today M-Pesa has around 30 million users on a monthly active basis. It generates over $700 million of revenue for Safaricom. So that's quite a really powerful thing, because this is a telco, a carrier, a network operator, suddenly taking more than, in fact, its largest revenue comes from a financial service. So that's, that all stems from us anticipating a particular market development nearly 15 years ago, actually. So M-Pesa basically just allows someone to move money between A and B. And we didn't really, at the outset, when we think about a trajectory that we were anticipating, to use Rajesh's page, we were looking actually to Asia, and we could see an application of microservices, microfinance, amongst lower income groups. And we also had a technology on our hands. And so we said, look, let's assume we can start to discover how to make microfinance work using technology in an East African context. And so we went into the market with a rough idea, and then we observed patterns over time that allowed us to change behavior. And if I quickly move through the slides, the second example, I'm sorry, the slides are slightly out of order here, but the second example I'm going to give you is about M-Kopa, where we're addressing a lack of access to power. Now, 600 million people in Kenya do not have access to power at the moment, which is market failure in the extreme, and yet we're able to use technology to bring solar energy to households and solve a lighting problem. today, M-Cobra has about 1 million customers. It's a big business. We employ around 2,000 people in East Africa, and and it set a trend, and the market is now full of many players offering the same sort of pay-as-you-go energy services. I'll skip through these slides. There's just some pictures that we've got some great friends and supporters, as you can see here. In fact, I was actually working in China on product development when this picture appeared in the China Post, and we actually had to buy it off one of the ex-president's entourage, who sold it to us for a princely sum. But it's a very powerful picture for us, because it shows we had a product which was attracting the eyes of the world, really, in changing the way we can give access to energy. So now let me just quickly move back to this trajectories and twist idea that Rajesh talked about. So we were anticipating the ability to use technology to follow a microfinance model in Africa. Banks had only reached around 20% of the population when we started, and so we stepped into that space knowing that there was a potential to use technology to make a big difference. But it was only really when we launched the product by solving a loan repayment process. This is probably a big topic to cover in a short amount of time, but we built a product that allowed a group of people to take a loan from a microfinance institute and to repay their loan using their mobile phone. And so we sort of solved one problem, and we integrated into the social network model, the lending model that is common in microfinance organizations in Asia. But it certainly wasn't, we didn't go in blind. We went in knowing that we thought this trajectory lay ahead of us. I'm shortening 2-3 years of pain, talking to regulators, getting the central bank to allow us to do it, and building a platform. But then when it was out and it was being used by about 1,000 customers, we suddenly started seeing behavior that we didn't anticipate. The beauty was we were sitting on this data. So in real time, we could see how these trial microfinance customers were using the product. And what was happening was people were storing more money in their accounts. They were sending money to each other and not just repaying their loans, because the system allowed them to do that. And so suddenly the lights literally went on, and we said, look, actually, the bigger opportunity here is to launch a person-to-person payment system. And so we turned off all of that functionality. It was way too complex, really, looking back. Had another long 2 or 3 sort of month debate with the regulators, and launched M-Pesa, which was the TV ad that I was hoping to show you. But from there, it's grown. And it's actually, after 14 years, it is now actually serving the sorts of purpose in terms of finance access that we thought we originally built for. So thinking about, you can do loan savings, pay your bills, pay school fees. You can use it for many, many things. But watching the data, realizing that actually there was a different product set there, allowed us to take a twist in the terminology that we're using here. So very quickly, we're getting close to our time. I'll just turn now to M-Cobra. So M-Cobra is a pay-as-you-go model. So in that hardware, we put some technology. So we are anticipating a need for power, 600 million people without access to grid power in sub-Saharan Africa. We were able to integrate known technology into a box. So we were using the fact that there was a GSM network. We could put a modem inside a control unit. We could control it. We could turn it on and off. And of course, we had this huge payment engine, M-Pesa, that we could use to collect small payments. So basically, it was a coin in the meter model. We said, customers, you take this away for $20. You can take it home, install it in your house, and then every time you want to use it, you can make me a small payment on M-Pesa, and we'll let the system work. It's a really good model, and we thought, against the trajectory, was solving a big customer problem. Then as we got into the business, we're not hardware people. We're sort of mobile network operators and payment system people. And then suddenly, before we knew it, there were 10 competitors all creating exactly the same product and at a price way lower than we could do. So we felt the pressure closing in on our particular model. But then, because of the way we built it the first time around, we started to understand the customer profiles a lot more. We could see which customers were using it in terms of numbers of hours per day. We could see which customers were paying us back quicker. And we were able to go a little deeper into those profiles and start to reframe a business model, which is now where M-Copa is. If somebody said to me, what is M-Copa, I would not say it's an energy business. It's actually a financial services business, because what we've pivoted the model towards and reframed the proposition around this is, and the brand we now use is power to own, because what we're doing is providing one piece of collateral that a customer can then use to take other loans against. And in fact, that's where the business has moved over the last 2 years. We're now offering one product, connected and financed, but you build as a customer, you build a profile with us, and we'll then offer you other products and services. And so there was a sort of an anticipation of the need, a move into the market, but a twist into a financial services play, which is now, now reaching 1 million customers in East Africa. So I think the last slide is just, I don't think it stops here. This is really just to illustrate, in an emerging market context and in a digital context, back to Rajesh's sort of race car on a road. I mean, we have an opportunity in Africa, I believe, and other emerging economies, to start thinking more radically about where the next set of connected products and services coming from. And, the team at M-Copa are very excited about new work around smartphones and connecting other appliances and using the same business model. So it's got a long sort of road ahead of it to come. And then I think Rajesh and I both like, this final slide, we both like this quote. It's so true, actually, that nothing in M-Pesa or M-Copa was particularly earth-shattering in terms of technical capabilities. We were just finding ways to place it into the market and then be able to respond very quickly using this sort of trajectory and twist model to bring products to market, which have now reached sort of tens of millions of people. I'm sorry, it feels like a real rush through, and I know we're a couple of minutes over our allotted time now, but I'll stop there unless you want to add anything to that, Rajesh.
No, thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Well, thank you, Nick and Rajesh, and thank both sets of authors. I'd love to take we have a few minutes here for questions, and as we wait for some of those to come in, I'll just say that, in the agility paper, you'll find a lot of these wonderful quotes and a lot more depth about, some of the conditions when this works well. And then in the twist and trajectory paper, they tell the whole story of M-Copa and M-Pesa, which are just phenomenal stories. Of course, true stories, not stories in the sense of made up, but really wonderful stories. I've used them now in my teaching, but they really also exemplify this idea of agility with these additional, kind of theoretical manifestations that they brought to bring it into the emerging market. So let me open it up to the speakers to see if you guys would like to add anything as we start to transition. Any questions from the other speakers or anyone else, the speakers to one another? So one of the questions that I had, and maybe this will also come up when we hear from Jason Wilden a little bit, but the idea of building the capability to sense and respond, how that happens within organizations, what it looks like even in organizations within emerging markets. Maybe you could both just take 1 minute and talk about what those capabilities, knowledge and skills look like within the organizations that you've studied. Kapil and David, do you want to start? Because I think you guys maybe even had a slide, yeah.
Chris, one company that immediately comes to my mind is KLM. I know airlines are right now under the cosh, but this is one company that has, learned a lot from the Icelandic volcanic eruption. When all the flights were disrupted, they started realizing the potential for customer service through social media channels. And, today, they've built it over 10 years. Today, they have a full-time team of more than 300 people working there behind the scenes on 15 different social media channels in 13 different languages, globally distributed. And the main thing when you talk to them, when I spoke to them, was the change in mindset that marketing agility just does not mean cute dog and cat videos on Facebook. It's about interacting with the customer. So they did prepare, and the thing was they changed their mindset in understanding what is marketing. It's beyond advertising, and agility means being closer to the customer. Something as simple as not expecting people to download the app. Oh, app is free. No, app is not free. It requires effort. And on average, our customers take 1.2 flights. So, the mindset change and having the infrastructure behind to reach closer to the customer so that you're prepared to respond.
Wonderful. And Nick and Rajesh, what about your experiences with capabilities or however that manifests?
I'll hand things over to Nick. One of the things I do greatly admire about Nick and his colleagues is the idea that the importance of unfiltered observation of customers. Yeah. Now, is that a capability or a mindset or an approach to doing business? Just being there, watching customers behave, not through their electronic traces, not only through many intermediaries, market research firms, your own customer employees, and so on, but yourself as decision makers. But Nick, you've done a remarkable job of being able to engage in these in agility and these twists, etc. More than once across context, not just in these two. Maybe you could talk about capabilities.
Yeah, Rajesh, I think David's point earlier when in your presentation, David, you were talking about the type of person that fits here, and you made a really good point. And in fact, Rajesh, when we run these classes and we get, before we expose the answer, we get people to vote on what they would do at different points, and it's I think majority of people in the class, certainly, and colleagues I've worked with over the years, there's a bit of a fear of a risk of failure, isn't there? And when we didn't really get too much into in the paper, but the beauty of the way we managed to get M-Pesa up and running was we were basically off the radar for 2 years. That we weren't on anybody's budget line because we'd managed to win a grant fund to build it. And so, interestingly, that meant nobody had any association of something not working. There was no sort of inertia that comes when you say, hang on a minute, that hasn't worked, we've got to change direction. We didn't really have that because we were splendidly isolated and we had budget to allow us to experiment. And so I think there's something in that, which we haven't quite to the bottom of yet, but sometimes when a lot of money gets spent, a lot of time gets spent on projects, nobody wants to genuinely put their hand up and say, it hasn't worked, we've got to go this way. It's a difficult thing to do sometimes, and I think the unique circumstances, the way we built M-Pesa in the early days, we didn't bump into that problem, and I think there is that sort of corporate inertia problem sometimes around people and capabilities. But I've been blessed really with having a great team of people that they actually like obstacles. They enjoy figuring out ways around things, and certainly in the early stages of a business, that's essential, and it gets it soon needs to be sort of replaced with operational capability and lift and shift as you're trying to get up to scale. But definitely early on, that ability to be able to respond to what you can see and then be prepared to quite radically change direction in a sort of twist mode. For me, it's important in that it's without that, I think you can miss windows, of opportunity, you could be blind to optimum path to take.